I died 3 times before I turned 21. The first time was when my father sold me for a bag of silver coins. The second was when they dressed me in white silk and walked me to the forest's edge. The third time was when I looked into the eyes of the Wolf King and realized that everything I'd been told about monsters was a lie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning because my story begins in chains. My name is Cassia. In the old tongue it means empty, hollow, void of substance. My mother chose it 3 days before she died bringing me into this world. And my father never let me forget that I cost him the only thing he ever loved. I grew up in the village of Sylvanus Grove, nestled in the shadow of the Lupical Mountains, where winter lasts 9 months and hope dies with the first snow. We were a village of survivors. Not heroes. Not warriors. Just people who'd learned to bend so far backward to stay alive that we'd forgotten we had spines. And every 7 years, when the wolf moon rose full and red above the peaks, we remembered exactly what the price of survival was. Sacrifice. One girl, unchosen, unmarried, offered to the Wolf King who ruled the dark forests beyond our walls. They said he was a monster wearing a man's skin. They said his wolves could smell fear from 3 miles away. They said no girl who walked into those woods ever returned. They said a lot of things. But no one ever said why he wanted us, or what he did with the girls once he had them. We didn't ask questions. We just tied the white ribbons and pretended the screaming was the wind. I was 19 when the elders came to our cottage. 7 of them robed in gray, their faces carved from the same stone as their hearts. My father didn't even fight. He just nodded, took their silver, and turned his back while they bound my wrists with ceremonial cord. The red kind. The kind that meant I wasn't coming home. You should be grateful, Elder Titus said as they led me through the village square. His breath stank of wine and rotting teeth. You'll serve a greater purpose than you ever could have here. Your sacrifice will keep us safe for another 7 years. I wanted to spit in his face. I wanted to scream that I didn't want to be grateful, that I didn't want to be a sacrifice, that I wanted to live. But I'd learned long ago that wanting things only made them hurt worse when they were taken away. So I stayed silent. I let them dress me in the white silk gown. I let them braid moonflowers into my hair. I let them paint symbols of protection on my skin with ash and lamb's blood, even though we all knew the symbols were for the village's protection, not mine. The ceremony was held at sunset. The whole village gathered at the northern gate, the one we kept sealed except for this night, the night we fed the forest. They sang hymns. They prayed. They thanked their gods that it wasn't their daughter wearing the white silk and the flower crown. And when the wolf moon began to rise, huge and red and hungry above the treeline, they opened the gate and pushed me through. The forest swallowed me whole. I'd never been beyond the walls. None of us had except for the hunters, and even they never went deep, never strayed far from the paths, never stayed past dark. Now I understood why. The forest wasn't just dark. It was alive. Ancient trees twisted overhead, their branches woven so thick that even the moonlight couldn't penetrate. Roots buckled the ground like serpents frozen mid-strike. And the silence. Gods, the silence. It pressed against my ears until I could hear my own heartbeat, thunderous and terrified, counting down the seconds I had left. I walked because there was nothing else to do. The path, if you could call it that, led deeper into the woods, marked every few feet by stones carved with wolf heads, their eyes hollow and watching. My feet were bare. The white gown was thin. Within an hour, I was shaking so hard my teeth rattled. Within 2, I'd lost feeling in my toes. But I kept walking because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant accepting that I was going to die out here, alone and afraid, and I wasn't ready for that yet. That's when I heard it. A howl. It started low, a rumble that I felt in my chest before I heard it with my ears. Then it rose, climbing higher and higher until it split the silence like a blade. So loud and so close that I stumbled and fell, my palms slapping against frozen earth. The howl cut off abruptly, leaving behind something worse than silence. Anticipation. They were here. I scrambled to my feet, spinning in circles, trying to see through the darkness. Dozens of them. gleaming yellow-green in the shadows, circling me, watching me. Wolves. But not like the wolves from the stories the hunters told. These were massive, each one the size of a horse, their shoulders level with my chest. Their fur was silver and black and gray, rippling over muscles that looked carved from stone. And they moved in perfect silence, drawing closer, tightening the circle until I could smell them, wild and earthy and somehow clean like winter wind over mountain snow. I was going to die. The thought was strangely calm. After 19 years of waiting for life to begin, it was going to end here, in these woods, torn apart by creatures I'd been taught to fear since childhood. Closed my eyes. I didn't want my last sight to be their teeth. But death didn't come. Instead, the circle parted. The wolves drew back, creating a path, and through that path came him. I knew without being told that this was the Wolf King. He moved like violence contained in flesh, each step deliberate, controlled, predatory. He was tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen, with shoulders broad enough to block out the moon and a presence that made the air itself feel heavier. His hair was black as pitch, falling past his shoulders, and his face. His face. Sharp angles and harder edges, a jaw like granite, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Golden. Not yellow like the wolves, but true gold, metallic and molten, burning with an intelligence that was distinctly, disturbingly human. He was bare-chested despite the cold. His skin marked with scars and symbols I didn't recognize. Tattoos. Battle marks. Both. He wore leather pants and boots, and at his hip hung a sword that looked like it had drunk more blood than water. Everything about him screamed danger. Everything about him said run. I couldn't move. He stopped 3 feet away and studied me the way a predator studies prey. Thoroughly, patiently, learning exactly where to bite for the quickest kill. The wolves behind him sat in perfect formation, waiting. For what? For his command to tear me apart. For him to do it himself. When he finally spoke, his voice was smoke and gravel, scraped over steel. Your name. Not a question. Command. I should have stayed silent. I should have shown defiance, pride, something other than the fear that was making my whole body tremble. But his eyes pinned me in place, and my mouth moved before my brain could stop it. Cassia. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Recognition. It was gone before I could identify it. He took a step closer. I took a step back. He smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. It was the smile of someone who knew you couldn't run, couldn't fight, couldn't do anything but wait for the inevitable. Do you know why you're here, Cassia? His use of my name felt intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. I lifted my chin, forcing myself to meet those golden eyes. If I was going to die, I'd do it looking at my killer. I'm a sacrifice, I said. My voice shook, but it didn't break. For my village. To keep them safe from you. He laughed. It was a dark, bitter sound that held no humor at all. Safe. They've told themselves that lie for so long they almost believe it. He circled me slowly, and I forced myself not to turn, not to track his movement like frightened prey. Do you want to know the truth, little Cassia? The truth your elders would kill to keep buried? I didn't answer. He continued anyway. 200 years ago, my grandfather made a deal with your village. They were starving. Plague had taken half their people. Winter had killed the rest. They came to him begging for help, and he gave it. Food. Medicine. Protection from the raiders who wanted to burn what was left. All he asked in return was a bride. One girl every 7 years to join our pack. To be welcomed, honored, protected. He stopped in front of me again, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. But your people are cowards. They couldn't stand the shame of admitting they'd traded their daughters for survival, so they changed the story. Made us monsters. Called it sacrifice instead of marriage. And every 7 years, they send us a girl dressed in funeral clothes and call it duty. His lip curled. Your elders don't protect you from me, Cassia. They protect themselves from the truth. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process his words. A bride. Not a sacrifice. But that meant all those girls, all those deaths we mourned. They're alive. The question burst out of me. The other girls, the ones from before, they're alive? His expression softened just slightly. Most of them. The ones who chose to stay. Some went home after a year or two, when they realized their families had lied. We never stopped them. We're not jailers. He tilted his head. Did you know the girl from 7 years ago? Livia. I remembered her. She'd been beautiful, kind, engaged to the blacksmith's son. The whole village had wept when she was chosen. They'd built a memorial stone in the square with her name carved deep. Livia is alive. She's mated to my second-in-command, Marcus. They have 2 children. She's happy. He watched my face carefully. You don't believe me. I couldn't. Because if what he was saying was true, then everything I'd been taught was a lie. My father had sold me to monsters, and the real monsters were the ones who'd raised me. As if sensing my thoughts, the Wolf King stepped back and raised his hand. One of the wolves, a massive silver beast with eyes like mercury, padded forward and changed. That's the only word for it. The wolf's body rippled and reformed, bones shifting, fur retracting, until a woman stood where the creature had been. She was perhaps 30, strong and beautiful, wearing simple leather clothes, and her smile was warm. Hello, Cassia, she said. My name is Livia. And I promise you, everything Constantine says is true. I would have fallen if Constantine, the Wolf King, I had to remember, not just some man, not just some gods, I didn't know what he was, if Constantine hadn't caught my arm. His hand was warm, his grip gentle despite his strength. He steadied me until my legs remembered how to work. I looked at Livia, then at the wolves, then at Constantine. You're all shapeshifters, Constantine finished. The last of our kind. Once there were thousands of us. Now we number less than 300. We live here in these mountains, in these forests, away from humans who hunt what they fear and fear what they don't understand. His jaw tightened. The deal with your village was my grandfather's attempt at peace. Connection. He thought if our peoples could be joined through marriage, through family, we might finally stop being hunted. Stop being legends that parents used to frighten children. But we still frighten them, Livia said softly. She'd moved to stand beside me, and I realized she was trying to look non-threatening, non-aggressive, trying to make me feel safe. Because fear is easier than understanding. Hate is simpler than love. Constantine released my arm and stepped back, giving me space. The golden eyes that had seemed so predatory minutes ago now looked tired, ancient, like they'd seen too much and hoped for too little. So here's your choice, Cassia, he said. The choice every girl gets, even though your elders pretend you don't. You can return home tonight. I'll have Marcus escort you to the gate. You can tell them whatever you want, that I found you unworthy, that the gods spared you, that you escaped. I don't care. Or you can stay. For a week, a month, a year. Learn about us. See for yourself that we're not monsters. And if you still want to leave after that, I'll let you go. No one will stop you. He paused, and something complicated crossed his face. But I should tell you one more thing. One truth before you decide. He looked away, and for the first time since he'd appeared, he seemed uncertain, vulnerable even. Every shapeshifter has a wolf spirit. It's separate from us, but also part of us. A second soul that shares our body. And sometimes, rarely, a wolf spirit chooses a mate. Not because the human they're bonded to wants it. Not because it's convenient or smart or safe. Just because some instinct older than reason says this person is ours. He turned back to me, and those golden eyes were blazing now, burning with something I couldn't name. My wolf chose you, Cassia. The moment you walked into this forest, before I'd even seen your face, he knew. You're our mate. The world tilted sideways. I heard the words. I understood their meaning. But my brain refused to accept them because accepting them meant accepting that everything had changed, that I wasn't going to die tonight, that instead I was... What? Claimed. Chosen. Mated to a wolf king whose existence I hadn't even believed in this morning. No, I said. It was barely a whisper. No, that's not. I can't be. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. My own father didn't want me. I'm just... You're my mate, Constantine interrupted, and his voice was firm but not harsh. What you were before, what they told you were, none of that matters here. My wolf doesn't make mistakes. If he chose you, it's because you're meant to be mine. Part of our pack. But I don't know you. I don't know anything about you, about this, about... I was babbling now, panic rising in my chest like floodwater. I can't just stay with a stranger because some wolf spirit decided. Which is why I'm giving you a choice, Constantine said quietly. He held up his hands, palms out, a gesture of peace. Stay for 1 week. 7 days. Let me prove that you're safe here. That you're wanted here. After that, if you still want to leave, I won't stop you. Even though every instinct I have will scream at me to keep you, to never let you go, I'll let you walk away. You have my word. He said it like his word meant something. Like it was a binding thing, a promise carved in stone. And when I looked at his face, at the brutal honesty in those impossible eyes, I believed him. Believed a monster. Or maybe he wasn't the monster. Maybe I'd been living with monsters my whole life and just hadn't known it. 1 week, I heard myself say. 7 days. And then I decide. Constantine's shoulders relaxed just slightly, and I realized he'd been tense, been worried I'd refuse. A wolf king, worried about the choice of a nobody girl from a nothing village. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. 7 days, he agreed. Then he turned to the wolves still sitting in their silent circle. Return to the den. Tell the others we're bringing our guest home. And someone find Julia. Tell her to prepare the blue room and for God's sake, tell her to make it warm. Our mate is freezing. The wolves scattered like smoke, disappearing into the shadows with barely a sound. Within seconds, only Constantine, Livia, and I remained in the small clearing. Livia stepped forward and, without asking permission, draped her leather jacket around my shoulders. It was warm from her body heat and smelled like pine and winter. You're very brave, she said softly. When I was brought here 7 years ago, I couldn't stop screaming for the first hour. You haven't screamed once. I don't think it's hit me yet, I admitted. I think I'm still waiting to wake up. She smiled. That's fair. But I promise you, Cassia, this is real. And it's better than anything waiting for you back in that village. Her expression darkened. Much better. Constantine had moved to the edge of the clearing and was waiting with the patience of a predator. When he saw me looking, he extended his hand. An invitation, not a command. It's 2 miles to the den, he said. The path is rough, and your feet are bare. If you'll allow it, I can carry you. Every part of me wanted to refuse. I didn't want to be touched by him, didn't want to admit I needed his help, didn't want to show any more weakness than I already had. But my feet were bleeding, my body was shaking with cold, and pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. All right, I whispered. He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, and before I could change my mind, swept me up into his arms like I weighed nothing. I stiffened, expecting, I don't know what, violence, possession. But his hold was careful, almost gentle, and he shifted me until I was cradled against his chest, my head tucked beneath his chin. Hold on, he murmured, and then he started walking. The forest passed in a blur of darkness and moonlight. Constantine moved faster than any human could have. His steps sure and silent despite carrying my weight. I could feel his heartbeat against my cheek, steady and strong, and his warmth seeped through the thin silk of my gown until I stopped shivering. Livia ran beside us in wolf form. She'd shifted again without warning, her silver fur gleaming like metal in the scattered light. I should have been terrified. I should have been fighting, screaming, doing anything but letting a strange man carry me deeper into woods I'd never escape. But exhaustion was pulling at me, heavy and insistent, and Constantine's arms felt safe in a way nothing else ever had. So I closed my eyes and let myself drift, just for a moment, just until we arrived wherever we were going. When I opened them again, everything had changed. We stood at the edge of a massive clearing ringed by mountains so tall their peaks disappeared into cloud. And in the center of that clearing, carved into the mountainside itself, was a city. Not a village, not a camp. City. Buildings made of stone and timber rose in terraces up the rock face, connected by bridges and staircases that looked like they'd grown naturally from the mountain. Lights glowed in hundreds of windows, warm yellow and orange like captured pieces of sunset. And everywhere were people. Some in human form, some in wolf form, some in the process of shifting between, all of them moving with purpose through the streets. This wasn't a den. This was a civilization. "Welcome to Lupercal," Constantine said quietly. "Our home. And yours if you choose it." He carried me through the streets, and I couldn't do anything but stare. Children. Actual children, human and wolf cubs playing together, chased each other between the buildings. A market square bustled with activity, vendors selling food and furs and worked metal. I smelled bread baking, heard music playing, saw people laughing and arguing and living in a way I'd never seen in Sylvanus Grove, where survival had beaten the joy out of everyone. People stopped to stare as we passed. Whispers followed in our wake. I caught fragments. "The new one. Looks terrified. Finally chose." But no one looked angry or resentful. If anything, they looked curious, hopeful, like my presence here was a good thing. Constantine's home, I refused to think of it as mine, not yet, was at the highest terrace, a large structure built partially into the mountain itself. He carried me through carved wooden doors into a main hall where a fire blazed in a hearth big enough to roast an ox. The space was warm and lived in, with furs on the floor and weapons on the walls and a massive wooden table scarred with years of use. A woman appeared from a side door, older, with gray streaking her dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Finally. I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost. This must be our guest." She bustled over and reached up to pat my cheek like I was a child. "Poor thing, you're frozen solid. Constantine, take her to the blue room immediately. I've got a bath drawn and soup waiting." "Thank you, Julia," Constantine said with genuine warmth. Then to me, "Julia runs this household. What she says goes, even for me." Julia snorted. "As if you'd ever listen. Go on, get her settled. And you," she pointed at me, "don't let this one intimidate you. He's all growl and no bite unless you really deserve it." Constantine carried me up a flight of stairs and down a corridor lined with more of those glowing lights. I still couldn't figure out what powered them, before stopping at a door carved with intricate wolf designs. He pushed it open and set me carefully on my feet. The blue room was beautiful. A large bed piled with furs dominated one wall. Tapestries in shades of blue and silver covered the stone. A fire crackled in another hearth, and through an open doorway, I could see a bathing room with steam rising from a large copper tub. "This is yours," Constantine said. "For the week or for however long you stay." Julia left clothes in the wardrobe, they should fit. "The bath is ready, and I'll have food sent up. If you need anything at all, pull that cord." He pointed to a braided rope hanging beside the bed. "Someone will come immediately." He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at me. The harsh lines of his face had softened, just slightly. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you're scared. But I meant what I said, Cassia. You're safe here. No one will hurt you. No one will touch you without your permission. And in 7 days, if you want to leave, I'll let you go." He hesitated. "Even though losing you would destroy me." Before I could respond, he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that made my chest ache. I stood alone in the blue room and tried to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. This morning, I'd woken up in my father's cottage, a sacrifice waiting to die. Now I was in a wolf king's home, claimed by his wolf as a mate, surrounded by a people I'd been taught to fear and who seemed determined to be kind. I should have been terrified. Instead, I was exhausted. The bath was a blessing. I sank into water so hot it turned my skin pink and scrubbed away the ash and blood and flower petals until I felt human again. The clothes Julia had left were soft leather pants, a wool tunic, and fur-lined boots that fit perfectly. By the time I emerged from the bathing room, a tray had appeared on a small table by the fire. Thick soup, fresh bread, roasted meat, and wine so dark it looked like blood. I ate because my body demanded it, but I barely tasted anything. My mind was too busy spinning, trying to find the trick, the trap, the moment when everything would make sense and I'd understand what they really wanted from me. But that moment didn't come. I finished eating, curled up in the bed that was softer than anything I'd ever touched, and despite every intention to stay awake and alert, I fell into the deepest sleep of my life. I dreamed of golden eyes and wolves made of starlight. The week that followed rewrote everything I knew about the world. Constantine kept his distance, which I appreciated and resented in equal measure. He'd appear at meals, always asking if I needed anything, always polite but never pushing. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me from across the hall, those golden eyes unreadable, and my heart would do something complicated in my chest. But if Constantine stayed away, everyone else made up for it. Livia became my guide, showing me around Lupercal and introducing me to what felt like hundreds of people. Everyone wanted to meet the Wolf King's mate. Their words, not mine, and everyone had questions. Was I comfortable? Did I need anything? How did I like the mountains? Was Constantine treating me well? That last question came up a lot, always asked quietly, with concerned eyes. As if they expected him to be cruel and were relieved when I said he'd been nothing but kind. Constantine has a reputation, Livia explained on my third day, as we sat in the market square watching children play. He's the youngest Wolf King in our history, only 32, and he's had to be harder, stronger, more ruthless than any leader before him. We're a dying people, Cassia. Every year there are fewer of us. Human hunters, disease, simple bad luck. We're fading. Constantine has had to make impossible choices to keep us alive, and it's made him. She searched for the word. Feared. Respected. But not soft. Never soft. Except with his mate, said a voice behind us. I turned to find Marcus, Livia's partner, settling onto the bench beside her. He was a big man, broad and scarred, with kind eyes and a smile that came easy. You should have seen him yesterday, pacing his study like a caged animal, trying to figure out if checking on you would seem too eager or if not checking would seem too cold. I've known him since we were cubs, and I've never seen him so completely unraveled. Livia elbowed him. Don't embarrass him. Too late, Marcus said cheerfully. I live to embarrass our mighty Wolf King. It's one of my few joys. He looked at me and his expression turned serious. But truly, Cassia, he's trying. This whole situation is as new to him as it is to you. His wolf chose you, yes, but Constantine the man has to get to know you, has to learn you, and he's terrified of doing it wrong. Of driving you away. I stared at my hands. Why does it matter? There have to be dozens of women here who would want to be his mate. Women he actually knows. Women who belong here. Because the wolf's choice is sacred, Marcus said quietly. It happens maybe once in a generation, if that. When a wolf finds their true mate, their perfect match, nothing else matters. Not status, not convenience, not what makes sense. Just that pull, that recognition that says this person is meant to be yours. He glanced at Livia, and the love in his eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. My wolf chose Livia within an hour of meeting her. Best decision he ever made, even if I was too stupid to realize it at first. You were very stupid, Livia agreed fondly. On the 5th day, Constantine finally asked me to walk with him. We climbed to the highest terrace, where a trail led up the mountain to a lookout point. The view was breathtaking. The entire city spread below us, the forest stretching to the horizon, the mountains standing guard like ancient sentinels. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. When I was a boy, Constantine said, staring out at the view, my father brought me here every evening. He'd sit right there, he pointed to a flat boulder, and tell me stories about the old days when shapeshifters lived alongside humans as equals. When we built cities together, raised children together, fought wars side by side. He said those days would come again. That it was my job as the next king to make it happen. His jaw tightened. He died when I was 16. Human hunters poisoned our water supply. 50 people died in 3 days, including both my parents. I became king before I'd finished growing, and the first thing I did was order us to hide. To retreat so deep into these mountains that humans would forget we existed. My father wanted peace. I gave our people isolation. He turned to look at me, and the pain in his eyes made my breath catch. Every girl your village sends us is a reminder that my father's dream died with him. That humans will never see us as anything but monsters, no matter how many times we prove otherwise. But my wolf chose you anyway. Chose a human. And I don't know if that's the universe laughing at me or giving me one last chance to get it right. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? That I understood. I didn't. I couldn't imagine carrying that kind of responsibility, that kind of loss. Instead, I did something I'd been wanting to do for 5 days. I reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around mine immediately. His grip strong but careful. We stood like that, holding hands on a mountaintop while the sun set on the world below, and something shifted between us. Something that felt like the beginning of trust. Tell me about yourself, he said quietly. Not about your village or your father or what they did to you. About you. What you like. What you dream about. What makes you laugh. So I did. And for the first time in my life, someone listened like my words mattered. The 7th day came too fast. I woke knowing this was the day I had to decide. Stay or go. Take a chance on this impossible situation or return to the only life I'd ever known. Constantine had promised not to pressure me, but I could feel the weight of his wolf's choice, could sense the entire city holding its breath. Julia brought breakfast to my room. She'd done that every morning, always with a kind word and a warm smile, but this time she sat down beside me on the bed. Whatever you choose, child, know that we'll understand, she said gently. This is your life. Choice. Don't let anyone, not Constantine, not his wolf, not the weight of prophecy or fate or whatever you want to call it, make you feel like you owe us something. You don't. But I'd be hurting him, I whispered. If I leave, I'd be rejecting his wolf's choice. You'd be choosing yourself, Julia corrected. And there's no shame in that. Constantine would hurt, yes, but he'd survive. He's stronger than he looks. I pause. Though I will say this, in all my years serving this family, I've never seen him as happy as he's been this week. Watching him try to court you has been like watching winter remember how to be spring. After she left, I dressed slowly and made my way down to the main hall. Constantine was waiting by the fire, and the tension in his shoulders told me he'd been there for hours. It's time, he said quietly. Not a question. It's time, I agreed. We walked in silence through the waking city, past people who averted their eyes to give us privacy, down through the terraces to the forest path that led back to Sylvanus Grove. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? He'd made his offer. I had to give my answer. At the edge of the clearing where he'd first found me, Constantine finally stopped and turned to face me. Whatever you choose, Cassia, I want you to know something. His voice was rough, raw with emotion held barely in check. This week with you has been the best week of my life. You're funny and fierce and so much stronger than you realize. You question everything, challenge everything, refuse to just accept what you're told. You make me want to be better. Be softer. Be the man my father thought I could be. He reached up and cupped my face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. My wolf chose you, yes, but I'm choosing you too. Not because of fate or prophecy or ancient magic. Because you're you, and you're magnificent, and every day I don't get to spend with you feels like a day stolen from a life I should be living. His golden eyes blazed. But I meant my promise. If you want to leave, I'll let you go. Just know that wherever you are, whatever you choose, you'll have my heart. Always. And there, with this impossible man looking at me like I was something precious, something worth fighting for, I realized the truth that had been building for 7 days. I didn't want to go back to Sylvanus Grove. I didn't want to return to a father who'd sold me, to elders who'd lied to me, to a life where I was nothing and no one. I wanted this man, this pack, this chance at something more. I'm staying, I said, and watched his face transform with joy. I'm staying, and I'm choosing you too. Not because your wolf chose me. Because in the past 7 days, you've shown me what it feels like to be wanted, to be valued, to matter to someone. I stood on my toes and kissed him, and it was like coming home to a place I'd never been. His arms came around me, pulling me close, and I felt his wolf rise to meet mine. Except I didn't have a wolf, but somehow I felt it anyway, that recognition, that rightness, that sense of this is where I'm meant to be. When we finally broke apart, Constantine was smiling. Actually smiling. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, lighter, free. You're sure? He asked, even though he had to feel my certainty in every line of my body. I'm sure, I said. Take me home, Constantine. Take me home to Lupercal. So he did. The city celebrated for 3 days when we returned. There was music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. People I'd only met in passing embraced me like family, welcoming me not as an outsider but as one of their own. As their queen, though that title still felt strange on my tongue, like a dress tailored for someone else. But Constantine never let me feel out of place. He was always there, a steady presence at my side, introducing me to elders and children alike. His hand warm against the small of my back. His pride in me obvious to everyone watching. And at night, when the celebrations died down and we retired to his chambers, our chambers now, he'd hold me close and whisper promises against my skin. Promises of protection, of partnership, of a love that would grow deeper with every passing day. We had a mating ceremony on the full moon, 1 month after I'd walked into those woods expecting to die. It was nothing like the weddings in Sylvanus Grove, with their somber hymns and arranged matches. This was wild and beautiful and sacred. We stood before the entire pack under a sky blazing with stars, our wrists bound with silver cord, and swore oaths that went bone deep. To protect each other. To honor each other. To choose each other every day for as long as we both lived. When Constantine kissed me, sealing our bond, I felt his wolf surge forward and touch something deep inside me. Not a wolf of my own, but a connection, a bridge between his soul and mine. The pack howled their approval, the sound rising up to shake the mountains themselves, and I knew that I was truly home. Life in Lupercal was everything Sylvanus Grove hadn't been. Here people laughed freely. They spoke their minds. They created art and music and beauty not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Children grew up learning to shift between forms as naturally as learning to walk. And no one lived in fear of the next winter, the next famine, the next sacrifice. I threw myself into learning everything I could. Livia taught me their history. Thousands of years of civilization that humans had forgotten or deliberately erased. Marcus taught me to fight, insisting that the Wolf Queen needed to know how to defend herself and her people. Julia taught me the politics of running a city, the delicate balance of keeping 300 strong personalities working together instead of tearing each other apart. And Constantine taught me what it meant to be loved. He was patient with my fears, my insecurities, the voice in my head that still whispered I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy of this life. He'd pull me close on the nights when the darkness crept in and remind me of all the ways I'd already proven my strength. How I'd faced death without flinching. How I'd chosen to trust when every instinct screamed to run. How I'd taken a people who were strangers and made them family. You're not the girl they tried to sacrifice anymore, he told me once, 6 months into our mating. We were lying in bed, tangled in furs and each other, watching dawn paint the ceiling gold. You're Cassia, Wolf Queen of Lupercal. You're the woman who looks at our dying people and sees possibility instead of extinction. You're my mate, my partner, my equal. And you're exactly where you're meant to be. I believed him. Finally, after a lifetime of being told I was nothing, I believed I was something. But peace never lasts forever. A year after I'd arrived in Lupical, we received word that Sylvanus Grove was suffering. Plague had struck again, and they'd sent messengers begging for aid. The same aid they'd received 200 years ago. The same aid they'd repaid with lies and fear. The council was divided. Half wanted to help, arguing that showing mercy was the path to the peace Constantine's father had dreamed of. Half wanted to refuse, saying that some people only learn through suffering, through consequences. Constantine looked to me. What do you think? Everyone turned to stare. This was the first time he'd publicly asked my opinion on a matter of city policy, and I knew my answer would set a precedent. Would I be a queen who led beside her king, or a pretty ornament who stayed silent? I stood and faced the council, my heart hammering but my voice steady. I think we help them, I said. Not because they deserve it. They don't. They've lied about us for 2 centuries, taught their children to fear us, sent their daughters to us like lambs to slaughter. They've earned nothing from us but contempt. I paused, letting that sink in. But we don't help people because they deserve it. We help them because we're better than they are. Because showing mercy when it's difficult is what separates civilization from savagery. And because maybe if we save them now, some of them will finally see the truth. See us as we really are. I looked at Constantine, then back at the council. Besides, Sylvanus Grove is my home. The people there are my people, even if they failed me. And I won't be the kind of queen who turns her back on her people, no matter how much they might deserve it. The vote was unanimous. We would help. Constantine insisted on leading the aid party himself, and he insisted I come with him. They need to see you, he said. Alive, thriving, happy. They need to see what they threw away and understand exactly how badly they failed you. So we rode out at the head of a group of 20, all in human form, all carrying supplies, medicine, food. We reached Sylvanus Grove's gates at sunset, and I felt strange seeing those walls again. They looked smaller than I remembered, less imposing. Just wood and stone, not the impenetrable fortress of my childhood. The guards nearly shot us before they recognized my face. Cassia, one of them, a boy I'd known in childhood, now grown into a man, lowered his bow with shaking hands. You're alive. Very much so, I said coolly. We've brought aid. Medicine for your plague, food for your stores. You can accept it or you can let pride kill more of your people. Your choice. They let us in. They didn't have a choice, really. Not with half their population sick and dying. The village was worse than I'd imagined. Bodies lined the streets, covered with sheets. The few people still healthy looked like ghosts, pale and hollow-eyed. And the smell, gods, the smell of death and despair hung over everything like a shroud. Constantine organized our people with military efficiency. The healers went house to house, treating the sick. The strong helped bury the dead with dignity. I found myself working beside people I'd grown up with, people who'd watched me walk to my death and done nothing. They couldn't meet my eyes. None of them could. On the 3rd day, after we'd turned the tide and the plague was retreating, the elders finally summoned us. All 7 of them, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Elder Titus, who'd given me to Constantine, could barely stand. We owe you a debt, he said, the words clearly choking him. You came when you had no reason to help. He faltered. When we wronged you. You did more than wrong me, I said, and my voice was ice. You lied to me my entire life. You sold me like property and called it sacrifice. You made me believe I was worth nothing, that my death would be the only meaningful thing I ever did. And you did it to save yourselves from admitting the truth, that your ancestors traded daughters for survival, and you were too cowardly to honor that bargain honestly. Elder Titus flinched like I'd struck him. But you know what's worse. Continued. You did it to every girl before me. Julia, Portia, Anna, Livia, dozens of others whose names I've learned. You let their families mourn them as dead when they were alive and happy. You built memorials to their sacrifice when they were raising children and building lives. You stole their futures to protect your pride. I stepped closer, and the elders shrank back. The Wolf King's people aren't monsters. You are. You're the ones who deal in lies and fear and human sacrifice. You're the ones who deserve to be feared. I let that hang in the air for a moment. But we're still going to help you. 'Cause that's what good people do. They help even when it's hard. Even when it's not deserved. And maybe someday you'll learn that lesson too. I turned and walked out, and Constantine followed. Behind us, I heard one of the elders begin to weep. We left Sylvanus Grove the next morning. As we rode away, I looked back one last time at the village that had been my prison for 19 years. Felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing. Just a distant pity for people still trapped in cages of their own making. Do you regret coming back? Constantine asked softly. I shook my head. I needed to see it. To face them. To prove to myself that I'm not that scared girl anymore. That they don't have power over me. I smiled up at him. And I wanted them to see what they lost. See me happy and loved and free. See that their worst nightmare, me surviving, me thriving, came true. He leaned over and kissed my temple. You're magnificent when you're ruthless. Did I ever tell you that? Once or twice, I said with a grin. But feel free to tell me again. The years that followed were the happiest of my life. I became not just a queen in title, but a true leader. I worked with Constantine to open trade with human villages who'd proven themselves trustworthy. I established a school where both human and shapeshifter children could learn together. I helped create laws that protected the vulnerable, that gave everyone, regardless of whether they could shift or not, a voice in how Lipical was governed. And I watched our people grow. Not in number, that would take generations to change, but in hope. In the belief that maybe they had a future after all. That maybe the world was changing, slowly but changing nonetheless. Constantine and I had our first child 3 years after I arrived in Lipical. Daughter. We named her Aurora, because she came into the world at dawn, screaming her defiance at the sky. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and when she was 3 months old, she shifted into a wolf cub for the first time. A tiny ball of silver fur with golden eyes exactly like her father's. I held her in my arms and cried, overwhelmed by love and terror in equal measure. This tiny creature was half human, half shapeshifter, living proof that our peoples could be joined. That peace was possible. That the future Constantine's father had dreamed of could still come true. She's going to change the world, Constantine whispered, his hand gentle on our daughter's tiny head. Just like her mother did. 2 years later we had a son. Tiberius. He was quieter than his sister, more thoughtful, but with the same stubborn streak that ran through both his parents. And when he smiled, rare and precious as gold, the whole world seemed brighter. I taught them everything I could. How to be strong but kind. How to lead without crushing. How to see people as they were, not as stories or legends or fears, but as complicated, flawed, beautiful individuals trying their best in an impossible world. I taught them that being half-human wasn't a weakness but a strength, a bridge between worlds that desperately needed connecting. And at night, when they were asleep and the city was quiet, Constantine and I would stand on our terrace and look out over Lipical, over the forests, over the mountains that had once seemed like prison walls and now felt like protection. Do you ever miss it? He asked me once. Your old life. I laughed. Actually laughed. Which part? The father who sold me. The elders who lied to me. The constant fear and hunger and knowing I'd never matter. I shook my head. No, I don't miss any of it. That life made me who I am, but I'm grateful it's over. And this life. His arm tightened around my waist. Are you grateful for this? I turned to face him. This man who'd been a monster in a story and became the love of my life. This wolf king who'd given me everything by giving me a choice. This partner who'd stood beside me through plague and politics and parenthood without ever making me feel small. This life. I said softly. This life is everything I never knew I was allowed to want. Everything I never believed I deserved. And every single day, I'm grateful your wolf chose me. But more than that, I'm grateful you chose me too. He kissed me then, soft and deep and full of promise, and I thought about the girl I'd been. The girl who'd walked into dark woods wearing white silk and flower crowns, expecting to die. The girl who'd been so broken by neglect and lies that she couldn't even imagine a future worth living. She'd died in those woods, in a way. But something better had been born. Someone stronger. Someone loved. Someone who'd learned that monsters only exist when we refuse to see the humanity in those different from us. That fear is a choice and courage is a choice, and love is the bravest choice of all. My name is Cassia, and I used to think it meant empty, hollow, void of substance. But Constantine taught me the truth. In the old tongue, the true old tongue, not the bastardized version my village spoke, Cassia means cinnamon. A spice that looks plain but holds fire within. A flavor that seems simple until you taste it and realize it's complex, powerful, impossible to ignore. I am Cassia, Wolf Queen of Lupical. I am the woman who was offered as a sacrifice and chose to become a survivor. I am the bridge between human and shapeshifter. The living proof that understanding can triumph over fear. And this is my story. The story of how I walked into the darkness expecting death and found life instead. How I met a wolf king and discovered that sometimes the monsters in our stories are just people we haven't bothered to understand. How I learned that family isn't about blood or species or tradition. It's about who chooses to stand beside you when the world demands you stand alone. They offered me as a sacrifice to the wolf king. But his wolf chose me as his mate. And in doing so, he gave me something my own people never did. He gave me a choice. And I chose love. 20 years have passed since that night in the forest. Lupical has grown. Our trade routes extending to a dozen human villages who've learned we're not the monsters their grandparents feared. Aurora leads diplomatic missions. Her gift for languages and easy charm making her the perfect ambassador. Tiberius runs our defenses, strategic and careful, keeping our people safe without resorting to the isolationism that nearly destroyed us. And Constantine and I still stand on our terrace every night, holding hands, watching our city live and breathe and thrive. Sometimes I think about the girl I was. The girl who believed she was nothing. And I want to go back and tell her, hold on. Just hold on. Because the darkness you're walking into isn't an ending. It's a beginning. And on the other side of your fear is a life more beautiful than you can possibly imagine. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward, making choices, taking chances, building the world we want to see instead of accepting the world we're given. So that's what I do. Every day. Every choice. Every moment. I choose love over fear. Understanding over hatred. Hope over despair. And I choose Constantine, my wolf king, my partner, my mate, every single day. Because in the end, that's what changes the world. Not grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. Just people choosing each other over and over, until those choices become the foundation of something unshakable. This is my story. But it's also yours if you want it to be. 'Cause we all walk into dark woods sometimes. We all face monsters that turn out to be mirrors. We all have moments where we can choose to let fear win or choose to hope anyway. Choose hope. Choose love. Choose to see the humanity in those different from you. Choose to be brave enough to trust that sometimes, the darkness is just the beginning of dawn. And if you've stayed with me through this whole story, if you've walked with me from sacrifice to queen, from terror to triumph, then I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. Thank you for believing that even the darkest beginnings can have beautiful endings. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. Because we're all connected. All of us walking through our own dark forests. All of us hoping to find our own version of home. And knowing you're out there listening to my story makes me feel less alone. Makes all of us less alone. Drop your city in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know, braver than they believe, more worthy of love than they've been told. And if this story touched you, if it made you think or feel or see the world differently even for a moment, let me know. Hit that like button. Share it with your pack, your family, your people. Because stories have power. They change hearts. They open minds. They remind us that we're all just trying to survive our own dark woods and find our way home. This is Cassia signing off. May you all find your wolf king. May you all discover that you're worth choosing. And may you all learn that sometimes, the best thing that ever happens to you looks like the worst thing at first. Until next time, my pack. Stay wild. Stay brave. Stay loved.